Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone who's been able to join us this morning. Good morning to all of you. And just to introduce myself, I'm Brian Smith, the chair of Toronto Community Housing Board's Governance, Communications and Human Resources Committee. Certainly want to welcome everyone to this public session of today's committee meeting. Let me, first of all, I'd like to apologize for having it to start 15 minutes later. So I apologize for that, and hopefully that won't cause problems for any of the tenants who wanted to join the meeting today. Let me begin with an acknowledgement that the land each of us is on was, as we hold this virtual meeting, is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We have a number of reports that we're going to look at today, and we have a fair number of deputations that I'm looking forward to hearing from tenants. So we'll first want to start by asking if there are any conflicts of interest from any of the committee members. Hearing none, there are no conflicts of interest were declared for any agenda item. I would like to approve the public agenda items. I'm not sure, Dara, but I think there are, since we have quite a few deputations, really, I'm not sure whether any of the items can be held. So we will deal with each of them as we go through. So we just need to confirm the agenda at this point. So do we need a motion to approve the agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay. Moved by Lily, seconded by Debbie. All those in favor? Motion carried. Confirmation of the public minutes of the last meeting. We have a motion to approve the public meeting minutes of November the 14th, 2022. Are there any questions, or can I have a motion to approve the minutes of November the 14th, 2022?
Wasn't there. I can't. Sorry.
Marcel, would you move that? Is he there?
Yep. I think I saw him.
He's on mute, but I saw him wave. So
Yes.
thank you. Do I have a second? I can't see everybody, so if somebody speak up, that would be great. I'm sure who's on. And who was there? Zuba there?
Sorry, I was muted, Debbie.
Okay, Debbie. Okay, you second that?
Yes.
All those in favor? Minutes are carried. The public work. Did we have a deputation?
We do. Yes.
On the business arising. So maybe I'm sorry I missed that, but because usually it's down further. But is Catherine online?
Ms. Wilkinson's joined the meeting.
Yes.
I can. You wanted to comment with regards to the business arising from the public meeting minutes?
I did, and thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, so it is to do with both the business arising and the briefing note that was provided. So first, I'd like to start by thanking you for ensuring tenants can now fully participate and be seen and heard when deputing before the board. Nice to see you guys and for you to see us. The agenda for today's meeting from the event page on the Toronto Community Housing website lists both item 5, the public action item list, and item 5, the briefing note. However, when I actually printed the agenda from the website, it did not list 5, the briefing note. So, and I after I printed, I'm like, well, what does this briefing note belong to? So I had to backtrack and realize that the agendas were not the same, and I figured it out. But in the future, to avoid confusion, perhaps that whatever is posted on the website needs to be consistent with the printable agenda that stakeholders download to participate. I would also like to ask management to really consider refrain from using acronyms wherever possible when naming reports, especially on an agenda. If one were to go back in time to look up a previous report, they would never search for an acronym such as BN for briefing note, or today's agenda, item 9, EDI strategy. So your stakeholders are not familiar with management created acronyms. It's unfortunate it took 8 months, now I'm speaking to the briefing note, that this action item did not fall within the governance committee's purview and actually fell within BIFAC, because that's a significant amount of time for an action item not to be actioned. And after years of items requested and not coming back to committees or the board, it became clear there was a need to create a process now known as the action item list. I am the one who proposed this be put in place to ensure that board and all committees could track the items they had requested from management and establish timelines for receipt. And some items, as we know, will warrant a review and a response from more than one board or committee prior to adopting or approving an item. It's not unusual for items that pertain to tenants, particularly, to be reviewed at the governance or BIFAC committees. We also know that given the charter of these committees, they are rarely followed by tenants. This has resulted in delays of items to ensure that tenants have an opportunity to provide feedback on how those decisions will affect them. To minimize this from occurring, agenda items for the BIFAC or governance committees need to be viewed through a tenant lens. In other words, does this item impact on tenants, and should it also be reviewed by the Tenant Services Committee? This will ensure items are seen by the appropriate committees prior to referring to the board for adoption or approval. Thank you for your consideration.
Catherine, thank you very much. I think they're very good points made, and I guess that's why we wanted to move these. Unfortunately, should have been done sooner, as I agree, but to the appropriate committee so they actually can deal with it as they're essentially responsible for those that work. So and certainly looking at that, your same comments actually will come up in some of the other deputations that I read today, which I'm glad to hear today, but perhaps would be more appropriate in the Tenant Services Committee as they could perhaps get answered better and dealt with more effectively for tenants. So I agree with many of your comments, and we will continue to work on making sure that the information that's provided is in the right for the right committee and is looked at in perspective of how tenants might want to best respond to these. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Catherine?
No, I just want to say thanks for your good idea on the business arising out of there, Catherine. It was very helpful for the board and for everybody who's following things. And thanks to Dara and everybody for now we can see our deputants. Yay, it's only taken, we're out of COVID, but now we can see you. So it's really makes a difference, not just to have a disembodied voice, but to actually see people. So
Thank
thanks
you.
so much for all your work, Dara, and whoever else on your team pulled that all together. It's great.
So the next
you very much.
item is item number 6, the public work plan, and we have a number of deputations on, or well, we have one deputation actually.
Sorry.
And we had
Right.
did we have a written deputation on this? I don't think so.
And Mr. Chair, can we just get a motion to receive the action item update?
Oh,
I'll move
Sure.
that. Mhm.
I'll second.
thanks, Paula.
Debbie.
Second by Debbie. And all those in favor?
Here.
Motion's carried. So item number 6 is the public work plan. And Catherine, I'm glad you're still with us because we can see you. And please speak to that item.
Thank you. It's not often I hear that. When is Catherine going to go away? So,
Never.
well, you may think that as a director, but the work plan, it just seems a little vague as I look at it. I think in previous years they were more fulsome and we understood the nature of things that were coming forward. But I did want to touch on a couple of areas I identified for consideration that fall within the charter of the governance committee. So on the April 11th, 2023 meeting, there's a policy review schedule. And it's been a best practice to review policies every 2 years. That's pretty much how it is. But with this in mind, I wanted to identify a policy that has not been reviewed for 13 years. And that is the board deputation policy for stakeholders. The procedural rules bylaw that's presented to you today and another item, it's put in place to govern the board and to comply with shareholder requirements. The board's deputation policy for stakeholders is a byproduct of this procedural rules. So it has not been reviewed since 2010. We would all agree, and perhaps some of the new directors coming on may in time agree, that there are challenges, with the existing policy and with the way that the deputation process functions. I really don't think it's necessarily working well for the board. And at the same time, it really isn't working well for some of our deputants who may not be as familiar or understand the process and how to be the most effective. So we need to sit down with tenants and look at this and create a policy that meets the corporation's needs and improves not only the process, but the experience for stakeholders who depute. So I would really hope, I'm going to ask, maybe not this governance committee, perhaps the next one, if we could make a commitment to undertake a stakeholder consultation to revise this policy. The next item is the May 17th, 2023 biannual human resource divisional update. So, the board may not be familiar so much with operations, what's going on in our community. So I just want to touch on some of the things that are impacting our communities. There have been many staffing changes, as you know, yet we still don't see any organizational charts. That's always been a challenge. We have several senior staff members who are in an acting capacity. There are specific HR timelines as to how long an employee may remain in an acting capacity. Succession planning is critical. We not only have to recruit the best, we have to retain them for the long haul. Last fall, we appointed an interim commissioner of housing equity. And this month, we appointed another interim commissioner of housing equity. There needs to be transparency around these roles and the steps being taken to bring stability to the organization and confidence to stakeholders, tenants, and the shareholder. This continues to be one of our greatest challenges. In the service hubs, there are multiple layers of staff. Tenants are provided with the names of their site staff only. So if they wish to, escalate a concern or speak to a supervisor, they have no idea who the site staff report to. There is no staff list on the Toronto Community Housing website. The board approved it, and there was a commitment to put a staff list back on the public website. So it's about accessibility, accountability, and transparency. That's just a few things that come to mind. Perhaps during the course of the year, I may think of some others. So I just wanted to thank you for your consideration of the issues I have raised.
Again, Catherine, very good suggestions. We will certainly take a look at all of them and see how we may be able to incorporate them into our work plan as we move forward. I'm not sure that, at least for me, I can remember the one on the deputations, but we'll pull that and take a look at it and see how we can review it and what the process may be in getting a tenant input on that.
Yeah, Brian, if I may, Catherine, just off the top of your head, what are one or two things you would want to see change in the deputation process? What's not working for tenants?
The process?
What about the process?
Yeah, no, so I don't want to get into it here and now because I'm certainly not the overarching decision maker. This is a collective of tenants that need to get together. I personally can handle myself. Clearly, as you can see, I don't have a problem. I know how to play and I know what I'm supposed to do. And I know that clock is ticking. But for new people and recruiting new people who might like to depute, they don't get it. It's very, they don't understand it. They come in and, they don't adhere to the agenda. And then, they get argumentative or they bring a personal issue that has no bearing with the board. And then the board is put on the spot and staff, how are you going to fix my leaky tap? So this isn't the forum for that to happen. So I really think it could work better and we need to make sure that it works better. And that the key to this also is once we make it work better is to communicate it out. Tenants have no idea there's a board. They don't know there's tenants on the board. They don't know they can speak before this board. And for the handful that do, it's not always necessarily a positive experience and they may not come back.
Okay, so it's about information and education as well.
Right.
Okay, just so we have a sense of what we're talking about. Thanks for that.
Do you also, Catherine, think that we need to look at other ways because obviously there are the things that impact directly, the mechanisms by which those issues can be dealt with that are specific to an individual tenant, perhaps, that need to be addressed and find ways. I mean, because we can't really address those individual things at a committee meeting. I mean, we can refer them back to staff and that, and obviously if it's still not dealt with, we'll make sure it's done. But hopefully before it needs to reach this level, hopefully those issues can be dealt with in an efficient way for tenants to get whatever it is that they need to have resolved.
So what it speaks to, Brian, thank you for mentioning that, is there is, I think, 3 different ways in which you can complain at this corporation, which says something unto itself. And sometimes tenants aren't successful in those processes or with their local staff. And there is no public organization chart. There's no staff list. There's no other person they can go to. If you have an issue about something in your community and you don't feel your staff are being cooperative, you're going to call the CEO, you're going to call the COO, you're going to call the media, or you're going to land at the board. So if they have access to the appropriate staff to resolve their issues at the local level, we shouldn't be on the 6 o'clock news.
Or on a voice message, the senior staff person that at some point, obviously we'll get back, but obviously with that many tenants, there's only so many people you can resolve these individual items with.
Yeah.
I have something, Brian.
Yes,
First of all,
Paula.
just on the hubs, there's going to be a review. So it'll be good to have your input as to how tenants can give their feedback, how they're working. So if you need to go somewhere else and you can't, that first time I've heard that is an issue. And perhaps this should go to the Tenant Services Committee. You could write to them, but I want to make sure we capture that from a governance point of view, Brian, that involving tenants and their experiences at the hub level. There's, I want to also remind you, remind everybody that, and we should as a corporation remind people, if you are not getting where you need to go, that is what the ombudsman is for. The ombudsman has one position that's funded for TCHC. And that is somebody that cannot get back and to take that through the system. So I think that probably rather than phoning the CEO, that's the ombudsman. They have to answer the phone, and then it's either a very live issue. So perhaps that's not clear enough to tenants. And Brian, the ombudsman needs to be clear that that's a place tenants can go if they've hit a wall, which we already get reports, but from what Catherine's saying, it just gets frustrating when you get into the loop. So that would help us with our practice too. And I remember Catherine used to be a kind of an annual, would it be helpful if there's big issues of some kind that we need that kind of tenant input in, that either the board or committee, might not be this committee, but would put a call out that we want maybe around the hubs, but we want to hear from tenants how this is working. I don't know if that is, Brian, what you consider about that, but I appreciate everybody that comes to make a deputation. You're right, it does, somebody's coming and then they're talking about something else. I just like anywhere else, that's not the role of the deputation at the board. Your leaky faucet is not the role, although some people do come with that. So I think those are three things that we should consider. But most definitely, I want to make sure people know that the ombudsman's there for them. Because we pay for one person a year to take calls from TCHC tenants. And if they're not calling, then that's a problem, if they have problems.
Maybe, I know, unfortunately, Jag had another commitment, but Dara, maybe you could make a note, because I know the leadership team is looking at the utilization of the hubs and that, so maybe you could see how that's going to be looked at through a tenant's lens.
Could you not?
I know that's one of the reasons that JAG was wanting to look at it, is from the point of view of their actual utilization, where they were any, some were, some weren't, but we need to look at that in a little more detail.
Sorry, can I just jump in for a second?
Sure.
This is Lily.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I really see that you have very thoughtful feedback and that you are trying to be a voice for people who don't even know how to have a voice. And so what I'm hearing is actually two different education outreach pieces. One is about how complaints can be escalated and dealt with. And I think what Councillor Fletcher said about, the ombudsman pathway, making it very clear, how things can escalate that pathway. But the other piece I also hear you say is, how can tenants be more empowered to participate in how the board is making decisions? And so, I'm sure most tenants don't even know when board meetings happen, some probably don't even know that there is a board. So I don't know the rules or how we would work this out, but perhaps there is a board engagement piece of the board, tenant engagement piece of the board that would include a website page that includes, the schedule of meetings, how and why tenants should engage, and even, a person who's willing to take phone calls to when people are interested and need like a personal kind of coaching through. Because I think for a lot of people, it takes a lot of courage to speak in front of people that you've never met before who hold kind of an authority or power position, which may be very intimidating for some people. But we really want, I think, at least I think it's very important that tenants are empowered to participate in the process. So I don't know how that would work, but I do think it's worth exploring how tenants can be more empowered to participate in board meetings, which would include an org chart, schedule, how to depute, like a whole kind of section. Do you think that would be helpful, Catherine?
Yes, I do. Thank you. There's some, I mean, there's a lot of things we do well, and we've made our best efforts, but clearly we can do more. And so those are some really positive suggestions that I think I'm certainly open to, as would other tenants be. You know, if the intent of this corporation is to have stakeholder input, your primary stakeholder is your tenants. So if your tenants aren't coming to speak to you, one should be asking why not. Or if only 3 people keep coming back, why is that? So clearly we haven't, you know, communicated well about the opportunity, how to participate and how you can make an impact. Look, a lot of tenants, they live in their community, they don't want to get involved, they don't want to get engaged, and that's okay. But there are other tenants, for some, getting involved with the board can actually be quite addictive. Well, and here I still am, you know, but you know, I mean, this is an opportunity. We can do better. And the reason we can do better is because we need to work with our tenants. And that will make a difference, not only for management, but for the tenants, and a more positive outcome and reputation for the corporation.
I know one of the things that obviously we need to continue to work on is tenant engagement through various channels. And I know Jag is very interested in doing that. He's been trying to get out and meet tenants, but obviously it's a long process because there are a lot of tenants out there and scattered right across our city. But we need to figure out many different ways to reach out to tenants and engage them at the board level, at the local level. So I think that'll be an area that we continue to work on, Catherine. Thank you for
Brian, I
raising
just want, Uba's there.
Uba, I'm sorry, it's just
Paula, go ahead.
speak up because I
can go after you, no
I
problem.
can't see everybody on my screen, so.
I just want to say, I think we need to provide a number of different forums for tenants to be involved. And I don't know if we've had a report yet from, and Paul is on here, from the 3 tenant forums that were held and what tenants had to say, because hundreds of tenants came out to talk to TCHC that won't necessarily come out. Oh, there's Nadia's here to talk to the board and us understanding some of those issues. And I understand that, Catherine, we've deputed, when I wasn't on the board, I've deputed with you at the board, but it's about particular issues. But tenant knowing what they're thinking, knowing what the issues are, knowing what's bothering them, and being able to look for patterns is another thing that we also need to make sure of. Not all those hundreds of tenants are ever going to come to make a deputation. So having different layers of tenant, of being able to hear from tenants, I think that's something, Brian, that we should be making sure is built into the upcoming plan this year. But I think Nadia was just going to say about the 3 meetings, and maybe we've had a report and I missed it. I'm sorry if I did.
So through the chair, Councillor Fletcher, we do have a quick update coming to TSC on the meetings. We're still analyzing the data, but we heard from quite a few tenants and we'll be bringing that information to the next Tenant Services Committee. So not through this committee, but through Tenant
Multi-governance,
Services. Yeah.
Okay.
That's your,
And that's the
very
first.
much interested in it, but it's the appropriate committee.
Yeah, I don't think we've had one of, Catherine, you'll remember the days when those were pretty regular. Used to happen down the exhibition, all tenants from across the city, people come in, you can bring your kids, there was daycare, everything. I don't think there's been one of those for a while, so it was really an important exercise, Nadia, to bring people together in that way and hear people that are willing to stand, go in their neighborhood and tell us what's happening. Thank you.
So quick question, Dara, do you have?
I think Uba had her hand up, Brian, after me,
Oh,
and then
sorry,
she
didn't
told me
see
to go
you.
ahead.
Please.
No, I just have a quick
Okay.
question. Thank you. Thanks, Catherine, for being here and doing great deputations. And when people go to complain or have a concern, usually they call somebody, but I remember we had a resolution team or solution team where one can go if they're not satisfied, and then it takes a week to, resolve the issue before they go to either ombudsman or CEO or Nadia. Is that office, are you familiar with that office? Is that working? Is that still open? I'm just curious.
Well, I personally have no problem resolving my issues. I'm very clear.
And I'm talking about in terms of general, I'm talking about the tenants. No, I know you don't have an issue.
No, I've actually heard from a couple of tenants, and I was quite stunned when a tenant said, oh, I had this issue. And I said, well, did you go through the process? There's the resolution team, there's a complaints department, you can call the call center, they said, I called all of them and nobody responded, nobody fixed it. So I'm like, ugh, who knows? I mean, that's, you know what? Sometimes tenants embellish things that might not have been 100% accurate, or they might have been dissatisfied with the response they got. Because sometimes people don't like no, you can't have a purple kitchen. I don't know, whatever the issue was. I think there's an awareness, and I think we assembled that resolutions team for a sole purpose. But the complaints that you're tracking, nobody could ever tell me that the numbers that come before this, that the numbers coming before this board in terms of complaints are by any way accurate of the complaints going on in our communities. There needs to be a place where tenants feel safe and a commitment that once you get to me, I'm going to look into the matter. I'm going to respond to you, which I know is what we try to do within 3 business days or 5 business days and solve it. Now, and if we did that and we did it repeatedly, then that would speak to how well our systems are working and would stop tenants from escalating outside of Toronto Community Housing.
Any other comments or questions?
Just note that most tenants in the city who don't live in Toronto Community Housing have no access to escalate anything anywhere. And I think we should always remember that. They haven't. There's no requirement for the landlord to get back to them.
Mm-hmm.
Very onerous process. So, and I'm not saying that there aren't, I'm just reminding us that, I work every day with people being evicted. People are not just run evicted out of their homes in Toronto Community Housing. So let's, right? Let's perspective wise, make it better but also realize the number of different options that people do have in this corporation to resolve issues.
Dara, do you have enough to make an adjustment on the work plan, especially maybe put an asterisk with regard to policy review with regard to the deputation issue that Catherine raised, so we can specifically look at that one as part of that policy review?
Yes, and I think there were a number of other items that actually fall outside the scope of the GCHRC work plan that were raised. We can refer those matters to Tenant Services Committee.
This committee, yeah, no. Great. So if I could have a motion to approve the public work plan for the committee for this year with those amendments, the amendment and comments that we've had, and we will refer the ones that are appropriate to the services, tenant services committee, as they need to consider them as important pieces of their work plan. So if we could move a motion on that, I can't see people, so please speak up, or I'll just call your name out. Uba, do you want to move that?
Sure.
Sure. Seconded by who have I got here? Marcel, you're nodding, so I take that as a yes. All those in favor? Any abstain or otherwise? Motion's carried. Thank you. Agenda item number 7. City Council directions requiring board attention. We don't know, Dara, whether you're going to speak to this. We had the directive that I had, that I guess Paula specifically, I got through City Council with regard to the Tenant Advisory Committee, but were there other ones?
I believe Paula Knight's in the meeting and can speak to this report.
Everybody, through the chair, yes, the report that you have in front of you, and I have actually Lindsay Vietz, who's joining me from my team, who puts the report together, and it really is a list of all the directives that we receive through City Council. There is one new specific one as it relates to the Tenant Advisory Committee. That was a motion that was passed in December. And we are working with the city currently to support them in terms of the actions that have been requested of the city in terms of terms of reference, recruitment, confirmation of members, the role of the tenant directors, etc. As the note mentions, we are currently working with the staff at the Housing Secretariat to provide the information they need to complete the review and prepare for the ECDC in February, Economic Development Committee.
And I'll just make one breaking announcement. It's
Breaking.
breaking. When we did the report, we thought this was going to Economic Development Committee, and we've now confirmed city staff have said it's going to Planning and Housing. I believe that's correct, Councillor Fletcher. I'm not sure, you may be able to confirm.
Well, that would be breaking because I haven't heard that. So you got the new news, but it's going
Yeah.
through the Housing Secretariat and through
Exactly.
Tenants First, which
Exactly.
goes to Planning and Housing. First, which
Exactly.
goes to Planning and Housing. Wrong committee. Yeah.
I just had a question, Paula, with regard to the Tenant Advisory Committee and how it was unclear in terms of how that was going to work and how its relationship to the board.
Well, to the board, I think it's the same experience through Tenants First, Brian, that there was a tenant advisory committee that was recruited through the city, but through seniors housing, there is a seniors advisory committee that reports back. It is a creature of the seniors housing, but it's recruited with the city. And I think rather than self-selection for an advisory committee, that we should be working very closely with the shareholder, because tenant issues and ensuring tenant voices is part of the shareholder agreement. So rather than a self-selected group or just TCHC selecting the group, this was the direction that I sought from City Council, and they agreed with that. So it's very much in the model of the Senior Advisory Committee. And I think I'm glad to hear, Lindsay, that you're on top of it. And I've also heard everybody's having this conversation.
Just, Brian, if I may, Paula, just for clarification. So this Tenants Advisory Committee is an advisory to the board?
No, to TCHC.
To TCHC.
But can be there on the board. In the Tenant Advisory Committee at Seniors, one of the members of the Tenant Advisory Committee is actually a member of that board. So
So
looking
that was gonna be my next question. What is the role of the directors on this board who are tenants on this
Well,
committee?
that's that's only for advice to go out. There's two tenants on that other board. One of the tenants is on the advisory committee, but I think we should wait to hear back. This was in relation to having all of the the selection of tenants, the volunteer group, and then having a tenant advisory group from that. And I think we need to have something a little more formal because they'll bring back how the senior advisory committee works. They've had a very interesting time around, particularly around consultation with tenants. That's what that advisory committee has focused on, to make sure that the senior tenants organization properly advises, and then the board understands and hears what that was. So it's just a different format. So that it does involve the board, but not directed by the board.
I guess my only concern is may become a bit confusing. I mean, I'm
Not
100%.
confusing at the seniors, Brian. Not confusing at all.
Well, but they're not quite as large as our organization, and I guess I guess in terms of tenant involvement and direction, I guess I just wondered why we wouldn't just have more tenants on the board.
Because the shareholder direction would have to be changed. I think just this is an opportunity to really look at how to have tenants. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that, and I'm sorry to have surprised everybody, but I feel quite strongly about it, having watched the success of this other committee. We had the 3 big meetings across all 3 sections of the city. What's the logical step there to continue getting advice and consultation? It might be not just one tenant advisor, it might be a tenant advisory that's across 3 zones, the way we're organized. I don't know. But I think it's worth having that conversation rather than just saying, okay, we've had these tenant selections in all these communities and these people want to do that. What's clearly their role? What are they going to advise on? What's their jurisdiction? What is the role of the tenant directors? That's part of that motion. And what's the interface? We've never clearly understood the role of the tenant directors. There's been times when the tenant directors on this board have been told they're not allowed to talk to tenants. I've been there, I've heard that. So it's probably time to deepen this conversation, given the focus that we'll have on tenant satisfaction, et cetera, of the CEO.
And also, Brian, what is
100% in favor of that.
Pardon me?
I'm 100% of engaging and figuring out this, just so long as it's not sort of set in stone, because we may find out a better way to do it.
Yeah.
So
maybe
I mean,
the
100%
engagement committee will help us figure out the best way to do it. So,
and how is this committee then related to the various tenant groups that's being elected at the hub level or those regional level?
those are just tenant representatives. They work in their community. There may or may not be.
So
may
they
or
may
not
not
be
be
on this
members
group.
of this
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't even know how big it would be, et cetera, so, or the formation, but it
So-
deserves some deeper thinking
Yeah.
than just saying we're doing X. And that's why I put the oar in the water there, and council agreed with me.
So
So
who is designing this process, or where does it sit right now?
It's been
So through
referred to
the
this.
chair, can I
Sorry,
speak to
sorry,
that?
Nadia.
Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
So the tenant advisory committee was one of the elements of the tenant engagement refresh plan that was circulated and approved by the tenant services committee a few years back. So in our last report that we had submitted, I believe in fall of 2022, we spoke to the update around putting together the tenant advisory committee who would review recommendations from tenants from the tenant forums in terms of changes to the tenant engagement system. So through that, we're now looking to get any recommendations from the city to ensure that that process is as open and transparent and involves as many tenants as we can. So we're working with the city. Once we get the final report, we'll be able to amend the current advisory committee. But again, that was a initiated process that was already approved to the original tenant engagement system refresh.
And will any of the tenants that participate receive some sort of financial compensation for their time?
Through the chair, at this point, we were not contemplating financial compensation for our tenant volunteers. There is a tenant volunteer policy that's coming forth to Tenant Services Committee, I believe, in April, and we can have that discussion at that point. But at this point, no remuneration is involved.
Okay, I just think sometimes when we're asking people who live in a very low income situation to do heavy lifting for us to give their lived and shared experiences, that there has to be some kind of support as well as incentive. You know, we're talking about single moms who are working shift jobs and who are very busy and tired as it is, but their voice is so important. And if they are not incentivized or taken care of, I don't know that then you'll only get a certain representation, maybe retired people or and it certainly won't be the broad range of voices that we want to speak into, you know, the future planning of TCHC. So I don't know where to raise that, and but I think it's important to think about equitable engagement of vulnerable populations.
Can I just add there that generally, Lily, there's always been transportation paid, food, childcare, so to make sure it's as easy as possible for tenants to be engaged. So you're not, it's as, but I hear your point.
Yeah.
I wanted you to know, unless it's changed, but that's generally, it's full support to be able
Accurate.
to, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe Lily, Uba as deputy chair of tenant services can flag that for when that conversation happens at TSC, given that the report is going through tenant services, that we have a conversation about incentivizing participation through a per diem of some sort.
That would be great because
Yeah.
too often when you're sitting in a room of advisors, it's the women of color who are sitting there and they're not being paid. And then everybody else in the room is paid at the table. And that I find very uncomfortable. So I'm really glad to hear that that could be added as a consideration. Thank you.
Can I just say one more thing, because I did make this motion, the tenants first, which came up, which was to put tenants first at TCHC, the mayor's plan. And Lindsay, you'll know this very well, you've been on it, was very carefully constructed with the recruitment of tenants who could give advice in this very transformational piece. And that's to make sure that whatever is happening around an advisory has the same depth, weight as that. So I'm not sure, Nadia, that this has, now you've still put something together or you're waiting, because the intent was not to have a self-selected group, that it would have a group selected through TCH, that it has the mantle of tenants first. And I feel very strongly about that, because that's how we've been successful so far. And so let's see where we get to with that.
So although we're responsible
Sorry, we're
for
strayed right off of the topic, Brian.
Yeah,
My apologies.
the directions from our shareholder, City Council. And obviously this area is more in line with the Tenant Services Committee, but maybe we could just ask the Tenant Services Committee to raise this question in their discussions and to bring it back to the board once they've come up with a recommendation on how to proceed.
Yeah.
So if there's no further questions on this, can I please have a motion to receive this report? We're not really doing anything specific other than obviously we have questions that we will hopefully hear back through the board. Can I have a motion to move receiving the report? Debbie, thank you. Can I have a seconder? Can I ask you, Lily, to second that motion? Thank you. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Item number 8, board and committee meetings at City Hall. We have a number of deputations for this item. Sarah, if you would like to ask Miguel if he's available.
Sorry, I've joined Ms. Wilkinson to the
Oh,
meeting
sure.
for the purpose of
Okay.
her deputation.
Okay. Yeah, you're on this list, my list as well, Catherine. So why don't you start then?
Okay, I'm happy to do that. But I do want to bring to your attention, in case staff are not aware, when you put a deputant in the lobby, you remove us from seeing or hearing the meeting. It's like we're sent to detention. So I had to quickly run to my other computer so that I could see you and hear you, because all I could see was myself in the corner. It was lonely. So maybe staff could play around with that, because that's not really the way to participate.
Yeah,
And
and
don't
obviously,
take that, and I want that time put back on my 5 minutes.
okay.
So take that away if you will. Okay, so,
We probably didn't know that.
well, that's
You
why
were
I'm
sent to
sharing it.
Sent to the corner.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you're by yourself. You can't see or hear the rest of you. I'm like, where'd everybody go?
Okay,
Okay,
Go
so
for
I'm
it.
pleased to see, we're talking about item 8, board and committee meetings at City Hall. And I'm pleased to see where I had indicated that, Toronto Community Housing had scheduled a meeting to be held on Hanukkah, that's no longer going to happen. So I'm pleased to see that meeting's been moved to December 6th. And I want to speak to the 2 attachments to this report as well. So in terms of the meeting procedures, there's a couple of points I want to touch on. So the first one is on page 3, 3.2, in terms of meeting locations. It says all meetings will start with a regular start time at 9:30 a.m. But the revised meeting schedule attached to this very same report indicates all meetings will start at 8:30 a.m. And when you look at the Toronto Community Housing website, it lists entirely different start times. So whatever comes out of this meeting, we need to ensure there's consistency, there's no confusion about what the actual start times will be, posted on the website, printed on the meeting schedule, so nobody gets confused. On page 4, 5.2, board materials. There's a comment there when there's a notice of change posted on the website, and it's also posted in OU offices. To my understanding, the organization no longer has, sorry, I used an acronym, operating unit. We no longer have those. We now have 3 regional offices, so that's really not a viable place to send public information. On page 6, 11.2, you know what? Directors are very busy people too. And in my opinion, where agenda materials are not distributed 24 hours prior to a meeting, the item, unless it's urgent, should be deferred. This will ensure the directors and stakeholders have adequate time to review those materials. On page 10, public proceedings, 15.1, the chair has the right, the language used, the chair has the right to expel or exclude any person who disrupts the meeting. I've raised this before. Use of the word expel, normally something you hear about in school, so it's archaic and it's draconian. Better language could be used. On page 13, point 17.6, deputant conduct. As also indicated in previous occasions, the language in this area is insulting and offensive. The word obey. More respectful language could be used. Perhaps comply with the bylaw, adhere to the bylaw would be more suitable and appropriate. I have never yet seen the word obey used in any Toronto Community Housing policy or procedure. On page 14, 17.11, distribution of communications, if necessary, may be distributed directly to the directors and the public during the meeting. This totally lacks transparency. Often, management will bring presentations to a meeting that are not provided in advance. This does not give the directors an opportunity to do their due diligence or stakeholders the opportunity to review those materials. This practice will certainly not work with virtual meetings. The board and management are aware that tenants who regularly follow the board and committee meetings have asked for Toronto Community Housing to reinstate the stakeholder electronic distribution list. It costs the corporation nothing, and it ensures that tenants and stakeholders will be regularly informed when meetings are scheduled, rescheduled, or canceled, and receive meeting materials. For tenants who make deputations in person, this is now more important than ever, as the meeting locations are subject to change. On page 6, the distribution and posting of meeting materials. Management have removed all public Toronto Community Housing Board and committee meeting materials from 2004 to 2015. That's 12 years of institutional memory. In its place, they have left a meeting agenda only, with a note at the bottom of the page that should you wish to review any of the meeting materials, you now have to contact a staff person in legal. The board did not authorize removal of this public information. This is not acceptable and certainly not a best practice. Don't cut me off. Taxpayers do not need permission from staff to review public documents of a public corporation that are required to be readily available on their public website. In a few short clicks on the City Hall website, one can access files dating back to 1998. Providing access to public meeting materials honors Toronto Community Housing's commitment to accessibility, accountability, and again, transparency. I would ask the Governance Committee to consider asking management to restore these materials to its website immediately. And just lastly, my last comment, with regard to the revised meeting schedule, directors are required to sit on 2 committees, and real consideration should be given to ensure there's sufficient time between committee meetings. For example, on Friday was the BIFAC committee meeting. Today is the Governance Committee. So if there's a director that sits on both of those committees, this causes them undue pressure to hustle, to be available, and to prepare for meetings. So we want to look at that on the schedule. Keeping in mind that directors may attend any committee meetings, even if they are not a member of the committee. The directors will still have a voice at those tables, but they would not have a vote. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Are there any questions that anyone has of Catherine? I just ask, Dara, do we have, I mean, I know we have a recording of everything, so, but Catherine, I certainly, if you have it in written form, you could provide that. Certainly, we look at all those suggestions that you have to make sure we can see if they can be made or included in this document.
Thank you. I will do that.
Thank you. I was trying to highlight everyone, but it wasn't quite as fast as you were. Thank you very much. Now we have a couple of 3 other deputants. I'm not sure who's online.
Ms. Birch has joined the meeting for the purpose of her deputation. Kathy, can you hear us?
Kathy, if you can hear us, please.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
If you don't mind, I'd like to take a moment, please, to recognize that we lost Lieutenant Governor David Onley on January 14th, and actually, as we speak, his funeral is taking place, and he was key in moving accessibility forward in this province, to the point of even at Queen's Park, making it accessible for people while he was in office. He made sure that people with disabilities could actually get into Queen's Park and be functional and be able to attend meetings and so forth. And I know that myself because on December 6th, many of you are aware that I was awarded the Leadership and Accessibility award from the current Lieutenant Governor and David Onelly himself. And I had no problems in functioning in Queen's Park. Since when his days when he worked at City TV, he promoted accessibility for people with disabilities by just simply participating at that stage by making sure that his disability was not hidden. They didn't hide him behind a desk. They let him be seen with his scooter, or whether he was using canes and his braces at that time, and continued to promote accessibility. I started Our Path in 2013, and in 2014, he was at the People in Motion show as we had a booth there promoting accessibility in Toronto community housing, and he did stop at our booth and visit with the committee and with the then CEO, Greg Spurn, and advise him that it was a positive move on the part of this corporation to listen to people with disabilities so that we could advise what we truly need, and so that able-bodied people were not guessing at what was in our best interest. It was better and promoted the partnership with Our Path. So I just wanted to take a minute to recognize that we have lost a great advocate and a really good human being, and it also promotes the fact that one voice matters. And when we will continue to do the work of promoting accessibility in Toronto community housing and in the city of Toronto. I'd also like to recognize that we also lost Hazel McCallion as the former mayor of Mississauga. So I thank you for allowing me to recognize these heroes in our society for different reasons, but definitely heroes, and they should be honored.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And obviously, we want your comments with regards to the board and committee meetings and that document was circulated. So if you have specific suggestions, we want to hear them.
I actually do. So Dara came to the last Our Path meeting on January 19th and brought this information about the in-person meetings. There are, and I noticed that the report wasn't updated in that. So what we brought to him is when you're having in-person meetings and virtual meetings and for accessibility, the timing is everything. Now, for instance, in the attachment to his report, it shows, the schedule of the various meetings, whether it be BIFAC or governance or the board or whatever. And it shows time frames that of when the meetings are going to be, which is different than what actually shows up on the website for calendars. And that when you are a disabled person who uses Wheel-Trans, you have 7 days to book your Wheel-Trans. So changing meeting times cannot, we have to make it so that those times don't change 7 days prior to the meeting, because people book Wheel-Trans, and if you change it after that 7 days and you've booked it, chances are you will not get to get your ride. So in order to meet duty to accommodate, you must make sure that that the meeting times are in place 7 days prior. And if the meeting runs long, the corporation has to be willing and able to provide transportation services from the meeting if they're in person. And you're running long or whatever. So the scheduling is critical. And making sure that this corporation meets that duty to accommodate.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I want to apologize, and Dara, probably we missed this. As I believe the times that are showing on that chart are for both meetings, the in-camera portion as well as the public portion. So we need to make sure that somehow we revise that both in the chart that's available for tenants and also on the website to make sure that it shows the appropriate times for the public sessions and not just the combined ones. So I know it's a little hard because unless we know what the exact agenda items are for that particular meeting, it may or may not, where the switchover is, may or may not be sooner or later. And it's maybe a little hard in advance, but certainly.
Yeah, but you got
these-
7 days,
these-
7 days prior
these-
to the meeting,
Now,
Brian.
these should, I was just going to say, these should be clarified at least, I would hope, a month in advance.
So,
Brian, that's good.
because it's
No,
not.
it's not a conversation. I'm sorry, Kathy.
So,
Well,
So
I'd like you to tilt your camera down because I'd actually like to be able to see your face.
I'm right here.
Great, thanks. I was only getting like this part of your
Yes,
head.
I know. I've got a little thing that is being held on. Thanks.
so we will look at making sure that the time is more accurately reflected as we get closer to the meetings, and to be consistent on the website as well. So Dara, please make a note of that.
Yep.
We have two other deputants,
We have
Jackie and Miguel.
We have two other deputies. With respect, I'm going to suggest that at this point in time, Ms. Wilkinson and Ms. Birch can return to the lobby and monitor the continuation of the meeting on YouTube with other members of the public. And then we can move on to the next deputant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you,
Okay.
Kathy.
And then I believe we have the next deputant on the line. I think we had two deputants who had elected that they would continue to phone in for the meeting.
Yes.
Sorry. Do we have our next deputant on the line?
Here we have either Jackie or Miguel.
I'm here. Good morning. Can you
Good
hear
morning,
me?
Mr.
Good
Avila.
morning.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. It's good to hear Kathy again. I love her passion and her knowledge of the board. Thank you for Ms. Birch also to address the issue of accessibility. In regards to the language, I was a participant at the Zoom meeting organized by TCAC in 2022, around this time in January. And I was removed from that conversation by TCAC staff. And that led into a problem, and we had to resolve it, and we had to find a way how we proceed to remove an individual who perhaps seems to be conflicting. Well, what you need to have is Zoom guidelines, to consider what is right, what is acceptable, and what is wrong. You cannot deny anybody the right to express himself or herself. That's what we call freedom of speech. And that is the most important part of the tenant engagement, is to say the things that need to be said. And I have been a regular to this board in committees since the year 2011. So I know what I'm talking, what I don't pretend to know everything, but I'm here to give some good suggestions. I heard that the minutes are going to be held at City Hall. Well, that's great. But one thing you need to advise future and current members that they need to go to the security table at City Hall, and Councilor Fletcher knows this. There was a great opposition to have this security, but what can we do? We live in a time of age that we don't trust nobody. So when we are going to have these meetings, please advise tenants, that they need to come earlier because they need to be a screen at the door. The second thing I want to say is that, I'm a tenant who doesn't have a penny from the corporation. I don't get a single dollar, but I come to the meetings for free. And one of the things that you guys used to have is to provide us with coffee and chocolate and sandwiches from one of your concessionaires at 931 Young Street. That was a good practice for someone like me who doesn't have the money to stay until 11 o'clock or 12 or 1 o'clock, and I have diabetes. And I can't afford to buy, food outside. I wonder if in the wisdom of the board, will this practice will continue at City Hall? Because the City Hall, they only provide water, With regards to tenant engagement, I want to say quickly, many of us, and I'm honored to be talking today because many of us, we have been there before. And we know the ropes of the tenant of dealing with TCAC, and we want to pass it on to other tenants that are, willing to participate, but they don't know how. So this is my suggestion, and I hear Councilor Chang, that we should repay our tenants. Why don't you hire us to teach other tenants who want to participate and want to be anxious to participate every month, but they don't know the knowledge? I want to tell you something. If it wasn't for someone who taught me in 2011 back there, I didn't know how to depute. But it was someone who ran for council, who saw me as a potential city builder, who said to me, "I'm going to take you by the hand. I'm going to show you everything, Miguel." And he was able to show me the ABCs for city engagement. So that's what we need to do, is to train our residents. But, we cannot do it for free. There has to be some kind of recognition for our efforts and our continued and ongoing tenant engagement with TCAC. Yes, I want to thank for this opportunity to speak. And it was mentioned that we cannot see each other during this conversations on WebEx. You don't see our faces. Come on. We have to break this we have the technology in a City Hall. If you are in WebEx, you can see someone participating. But with the current process with TCAC engagement, you cannot see our faces, only our voices. And we have to jump from one monitor to the other monitor, just like as it was expressed by the previous deputant. How many minutes I have left?
None.
Or have I finished my
Just at 5 minutes. You're just
I
at 5
complete
minutes, Mr.
my
Vila.
5 minutes. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks very much, Miguel. Any questions from committee members? If none, we need to move on to the next deputant.
Jackie Yu, I believe, is on the line. Ms. Yu, can you hear us?
Yes.
You
Hello.
have Hello, Ms. Yu.
Yes.
You have 5 minutes for your deputation. You can begin
Thank you.
when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and all committee members. My name is Jacqueline Yu, and I have been a long-time tenant since 1986, formerly named City Home. Thank you for the opportunity to allow my voice to support item A, 2023, board and committee meeting at City Hall. It is a huge step closer to transparency. Since decentralized four-pillar service to the regional management operation, tenants' complaints have not been addressed. As all tenants' complaints make their way back to the regional general manager, this concentration of power into one team create an environment where tenant complaint can be covered up and not dealt with. And no staff oversee the regional general managers and allow all the improper management to attack tenants, including home office is under regional manager office, solution team is under management office. They use and tenant engagement together to corrupt the whole system. From my personal experience, TCC regional management operation act sneaky, unprofessional, non-transparency, partnering with tenant engaged refresh, corrupt our whole system. By using secret non-real tenant rep and non-real committee rep and non-transparency advisory committee members for force tenants' voice, all are selected by the staff. The framework set out by the regional management manage tenants by encourage harassment, intimidation, apply two types of system, apply unfair policy to target the weaker tenant, such if English is not the tenant first language, and medical ill tenants, just like myself. Regional management using discrimination, target, and pulls tenants down to control tenants to show their absolutely superior power over the tenants. All feedback and policy did not reflect reality, and tenants have no channel to voice concern and are forced to suffer silently. Solution team and solution manager are part of the corruption team. They close my complaint file by refer to the non-true information and put it on my tenant file to shut my channel to further complaint. Tenants really live in fear and in danger, and no real channel to report. The 2023 board and committee meeting at City Hall is a big step closer to transparency. I 100% support that wonderful recommendation. Thank you for the opportunity to voice my support for the 2023 board and committee at City Hall. I welcome any question from committee member to verify my claim the again corruption in regional management team with tenant engagement solution team and CEO, COO turn a blind eye. I did bring many times to complain. No executive member look over. They just allow the corruption continuously. Thank you for listening. I welcome the question to verify my claim.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Are there any questions from committee members? My own suggestion would be that that the areas of concern that you've raised should probably be referred to the Tenant Services Committee because they're looking into those very specific areas of concern that you've raised. So I would suggest that your written deputation that you provided to us, we forward to the chair of that committee and ask them to review it. And I would encourage you to participate in their next meeting so you can address these questions with them. Are there any questions from committee members? Hearing no questions, then we'll just look at the motion that we have. Are there any?
Sorry, I have questions. I have some staff
sorry,
questions.
Paula,
Yeah.
couldn't see you.
I don't think everybody knows that TCHC is going to be leaving 931 Yonge Street and going to Metro Hall. I'm not sure how many people actually know that. So the moving
As far as our offices are concerned.
Yes, as far as the offices are concerned, so there would no longer be meetings
will
in
be
that
at City Hall,
boardroom.
though.
So, sorry, there would no longer be meetings in that boardroom because
Yes.
TCHC would not be there. Metro Hall is being outfitted for TCHC offices. But Dara, I'm going to ask you if there's a reason why, have you looked at meeting at Metro Hall, which does have large committee rooms, rather than City Hall, simply because all the staff will be at Metro Hall. It's very cumbersome what's the reasoning to move to City Hall rather than Metro Hall, since TCHC offices itself are moving to Metro Hall? I guess that's the best way to put that question.
So thank you for the question, Councillor Fletcher. And through the chair, TCHC staff have engaged the staff at the city who are managing the modern TO move, and TCHC's move to Metro Hall is part of that process. And in the context of facilitating that move, the decision was made at the city level that they would not be equipping meeting rooms at Metro Hall to accommodate public meetings, and that all ABCs related to the city would use the existing meeting space that exists in City Hall for public meetings. So further to that direction, we've reached out and engaged City Hall staff to see if we can make that move happen sooner than the end of the year, in light of the ability that it affords us to facilitate an in-person component for our meetings now.
Okay, thank you. And then I was struck by Mrs. Wilkinson talking about the fact that all of the board minutes had been removed from the website. I'm quite concerned about that. What was the reasoning for that?
So that exercise was undertaken as a consequence of the recognition that we needed as an organization to comply with our legal obligations under AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disability Act. Much of the material from those earlier years was not AODA compliant and couldn't be brought into compliance with AODA within the timelines that we were within which we were required to comply with that legislation. And so the decision that was taken at the time was that the manner in which we would facilitate that was to make sure that all of the agenda material was available on the site. I believe we did actually brief the board in relation to this as we moved forward in this process. But to facilitate
I hear you.
The agendas were on site available,
Yes.
and that any member of the public who wanted to secure access to the reports that supported the agenda material could do so efficiently through governance staff. And that's the process that we applied today. And going forward, we're making sure that everything is compliant with
I
AODA.
just want to stop now because there has to be a way, and I'm going to ask you, Brian. I understand it's not AODA compliant and the website has to be, but there has to be a cache of documents somewhere where people can go to read it and explain carefully this was not AODA compliant. Whatever we need to do, we need to legally look at that. We simply can't have everything. The city's website, I'm not sure, is either for the previous one. So I'm quite concerned that all of those decisions that we can't go, nobody can go back. We'd have to have governance staff. And maybe I'm off base, but I'm extremely concerned about that, understanding that there's no history there on big issues. So I'd like you, Brian, to take that up and figure out how we're going to do that, because even I can't go back and look at things.
So for those who don't understand the acronym, could you just let them know what AODA is?
It's the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act.
Oh, okay. Just because not everybody's on top of all these anachronisms. So
yes, sorry, I used one.
Yeah, that's okay. And there's so many running around these days, it's hard to keep track of them all. So, so that's good. So Dara, in terms of making it compliant, is that we can follow up with staff and see what needs to be done.
Well,
No, I'm saying I'd like to know. Let's say take Oshawa. Have they taken off all of the minutes of all of their meetings previous to becoming AODA compliant? Or I just think we should be looking, is there some way to have those? We understand we are now AODA compliant with all of our minutes from what, 2015 forward? But everything previous to that and the setting up of the corporation is unavailable. So to me, there has to be some way that you can find stuff.
To be clear, the agendas for those meetings continue to be online, and any member of the public who wants to see the reports that inform those agenda items simply has to send an email asking for the report, and they'll be provided with the report. One of the observations that led to us taking that decision was to actually review the number of times that those archived reports had been accessed. And there was no evidence that they were being accessed with any level of regularity that supported the cost associated. And
Oh,
there
it's
was a
money.
cost associated with having them on the website and making them AODA compliant. There was a
So
significant cost associated with making them AODA compliant. The question was that money that was effectively spent, or was there a better way to provide that service to members of the public who would want to access the reports in a manner that was AODA compliant? And so the reports continue to be available to any member of the public who
I
wants it. They
hear
just
that,
have to send an email.
Dara, I hear that, but apparently anything before 2012 can remain with an offer to provide alternative format upon request. So I really want to delve into this. I've actually gone back and looked there. And that sounds like it's money. So I really think we need to be clear on this as far as access to documents that are board documents and what happened. So I'm flagging that. Brian, you're off camera now. I don't know where you went,
Oh, sorry.
but I like
I
this
don't know
back
why.
again.
There we go.
2012
Nope.
on. So
So
there has to be, yeah.
We can look at a way to do that and the costs related to it so that we can do it in the most efficient manner, whether it's by making something online that they can
I don't
just,
want to do it here. I just want to make
Yeah.
sure we're looking at it and keep
Well,
this
there we go.
alive. This is business arising out of this meeting, please. Thank you.
yeah, we can just add it to the business arising for the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dara. Our last item is well, I guess we need a motion to receive the
And can I just
recommendation.
ask one other question, which is, Dara, you said all ABCs have to meet that are moved out of their HQs have to go to
City Hall.
City Hall. And what would those be? TCHC? Who else?
I believe ultimately their plan is that the TTC will move, although I think they have an extended date by which they are making that move.
Yeah.
I believe Create TO is moving as
Yeah.
part of this exercise. Beyond that, I must confess, I think was going to see if Alan Murray was in. Alan, can you supplement my list? Is there anybody else who comes to mind? I don't believe the Parking Authority is moving as part of this exercise.
Eventually,
Through the chair, Dara, no, I'm not. I don't know the answer to that. It would be
And
a
so-
modern TO question.
The next question is it preferable for TCHC to have the meetings at Metro Hall? Just like our boardroom at
My only concern
TCHC.
would be that I don't find Metro Hall is accessible for tenants.
Well, they're all going there anyway, Brian. That's was decided, so they're going
I know
there
the
for their everyday
staff,
business.
the staff are, but not if we're wanting tenants to be able to come in person.
Brian, do you know how many tenants come to 931 Yonge Street? John Campbell already raised that. Lots and lots of tenants go to 931 Yonge Street to meet staff, to ask questions, to do all of that. They certainly did pre-COVID, tons, not just to come to board meetings.
I understand that, but I just don't find it as accessible. So
It might not be as accessible, but we know, because John Campbell already raised, should we really be moving there because it's not accessible to tenants?
Mhm.
But on the other hand, having staff come to all of these meetings, unless they're on camera, I don't know what that's going to look like. And I think that is our issue here, that if there's questions to be answered, usually you can go back and forth up and down the elevator. This means everybody's there all the time. unless there's a mechanism where people are now on WebEx and able to answer on camera. And I'm unsure if that's clear. So Dara, I think we need to know about that too.
So the plan absolutely is that there will be staff in the room at City Hall, effective the move over to that location for board and committee meetings, who can answer questions from committee members or the board members in relation to matters on the agenda. There will continue to be some number of staff who will participate in the meetings on a hybrid basis, as there likely will be members of the board and committee who will elect, rather than to attend in person, to attend on a hybrid basis. The clear direction that we've got is that there is a desire to introduce an in-person element to the board and committees, to reintroduce that as part of the process through which TCHC, like the city, returns from COVID. And so this is the solution that we would recommend to the board in that regard.
Can I just ask if the future board meetings might also be live streamed on YouTube, similar to our council meetings and the police board? Because
I think they are, Lily.
oh, this is live
They
streamed
already
right
are.
now?
Yes, it's all live
That's correct.
streamed.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So, well, this will obviously come back to, but in the meantime, can we just have a motion to, I guess,
So the motion is to approve the meeting procedures to facilitate moving the in-person component of the meetings to City Hall, and forward those. This is an outstanding recommendation from the last time the procedures were at the board. There was a request to have the board's rules of procedures incorporated into a bylaw for TCHC. That action wasn't taken in light of COVID and some requests from city staff that we hold off on doing that at the time that we were ready to pursue. We'll pursue it once at this stage, once we have board approval, and approve the meeting schedule amendment to move the board meeting from December 7th, 2023 to December 6th, 2023, in light of the absence of a meeting room that's available for us at that time.
my only question there is with regard to the suggestions that were made by Catherine into the what's they're called, the director's meeting procedures.
Yes.
If we want to consider some of those changes, is there a way to do that without just adopting everything now?
I will follow up with Ms. Wilkinson in relation to those changes, and if we can incorporate them into the version of the rules that's brought to the board meeting on the 24th of February, we'll do that at that time. I would say one comment that I would want to clarify in terms of the meeting schedule. The meeting schedule that was approved by the board in December approves the dates of the meetings within an envelope of time from 8:30 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. That's intended to include both the in-camera portion of the meeting and the public portion of the meeting. For tenants who are interested in being able to book transportation or make their plans to attend a meeting, the key document for them is the meeting agenda, which we post on the TCHC website. That's the tool that we use primarily to communicate to members of the public what's happening at a board or a committee. And we post that a week in advance of the meeting because we're sensitive to the concern that tenants have in terms of being able to book their travel to attend the meeting and to understand what's on the meeting agenda for that meeting. So it's really, in terms of staff and tenants and members of the board, knowing, when will the public portion of the meeting start, and when will we schedule it to conclude? It's that meeting agenda document posted on our website that is the key document for them to reference. And that changes from meeting to meeting, given the volume of matters that we may have on an in-camera agenda or on a public agenda. And so really, for certainty, we do try our best to make sure that those agenda materials are accurate. I think that the changes that were implemented last year at the board level, when the board approved changes to the rules, have made our process more accurate. But absolutely, I take Ms. Birch's comment earlier to heart that for tenants who are booking Wheel-Trans trips to attend an in-person meeting, it will become more important that we start that public meeting as close to the time that we've identified in the agenda as possible.
And obviously, as I say today, end the meetings because we're over time now because they need to book their return trip.
Sorry,
So-
can I just ask Dara that when you're people were confused, something starting at 8:30, at 9:30 or whatever. If everybody understands there's an in-camera portion, the regular meeting will start at a certain time if that's finished. And that we're just kind of building that flexibility in that if you think you're coming at 10:30 and then it hasn't started, that's not fair. But it also the business that's being done in camera, sometimes there's a lot of discussion there required. So I just think we need to telegraph that more clearly, that we will be meeting in camera, tend to finish at a certain time and the other board meetings start at times that may run over. We'll accommodate anybody that comes late for whatever reason if they've had a problem, but we'll get to that. Well, we're back in person. It's pretty easy. You never have to be late here. You never miss a meeting online.
So, Paula, can I ask you to move that motion?
Which one now?
I was recommending that the recommendations contained in the report. And as Dara said, we will review the items that Catherine made to see what
Yes,
other.
I will move that, including review the items that were raised by the deputants. Yep, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And seconder, I have
Uba. Had her hand
Uba.
up.
I can't see Uba, sorry, but all those in favor? Motion's carried. Our last item is item number 9, which
no problem.
is the equity, diversity, and inclusion strategy. We have Barbara going to speak to that, but first, maybe we have a deputant, Kathy, is going to depute if we should do that first. Is Kathy still available, Dara?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Thank you. For my last deputation, it's more about accessibility from looking at the public agenda on the website. We're using a lot of acronyms.
Sorry. Okay. No, go proceed. I just want to make sure you're addressing this agenda item, please, Kathy. Brian, thank you.
Yep. Okay.
If you let me finish, Paula, I'd be glad to get to it.
Yep.
Great. So on this particular item, it says EDI. The average tenant, I would wager, does not know what EDI stands for. So part of accessibility is that you use plain language. So I would ask that when they're preparing the agenda that goes up on the website, that it be more transparent into what the actual agenda item is, and we lose more of the acronyms so that people can understand what's actually being addressed on the agenda. So that is part of accessibility and part of communication standards.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was good suggestion, and we need to look at those plain language issues for everyone.
So the name of the report is Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, but does the agenda not? The
No,
agenda item is also called Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion.
And
Is it not? Just
I think
question, Brian.
Okay, what's the question?
Well, the question is, on the agenda, it says Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Strategy. And the name of the report is the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Strategy. And then later on, it does say EDI. So I do think it actually is spelled out quite clearly on
I
this
think
time. This
I
time,
think-
there may be times it isn't, but
Sorry, I think I understand the issue and I can take care of it.
Okay.
It's how we're listing documents on the event page for the meeting on the website that I think is the concern. We can address
Thank
that
you.
going forward.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you, Kathy, for that. I think we have a lot of issues with our website and communicating on our website. And Brian, I'd like you to have a look at that between meetings, if you don't mind, because that's what we heard over and over and over again about what people are getting on the web, because it's clear what's here. And then Kathy has got something else on the web. So thanks for drawing that to our attention, Kathy.
Let's not use acronym, but even when we spell out equity, diversity, and inclusion, it helps in brackets if we then put EDI. So then there's a learning that happens, right?
Good.
It does have, yes, thank you.
So now we're going to have Barbara, if you want to speak to this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I am mindful of the time, and although we did have a presentation to make, I'm going to suggest that we defer that in the interest of time. I am joined today by Jamie Kramer, our Senior Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Consultant from the HR team. She is the sole and lead person managing our EDI strategy, creatively involving stakeholders and from across the organization to assist us with this priority. And Kelly Schultes, the director of the team overall that Jamie reports into. So as a quick reminder, in late 2021, early 2022, we undertook the first comprehensive diversity and inclusion survey in our organization of our workforce. This is focused on our Toronto community housing workforce to get a pulse on the experience of our employees in order to be able to give us an understanding of the priority areas requiring attention and focus as we build our strategy. After carrying out the survey, we undertook analysis, again, under Jamie's leadership. We developed an EDI strategy that we brought forward to committee and the board in the late spring. And since that time, it has been full speed ahead on implementing a series of actions and initiatives in order to advance our progress in this very important priority area. So this report is really just to provide and share with the committee the progress we're making. As you can see, there's a lot of different areas that we touch on. There's a lot of work to be done, but we're proud of what we were able to achieve in 2022. At the time where there were, of course, a number of competing priorities in the organization. This will continue to be a top of the list priority for us within the HR team, but not just the HR team, but really working collaboratively across the organization to embed equity, diversity, and inclusion in everything that we do. And so at this time, we're pleased to take any questions or comments that you might have about the report before you.
So open up to questions. Anyone would like to ask either Barbara or Jamie?
I'm actually trying to quickly get to the report. I was
the very last item, page 60 something.
I'm having a hard time that we have this report as the last item on our agenda, and it's 12:44. So I just move that we move this to the next one and give everybody a chance to review and have a bigger discussion on it, and any conversations that need to be held with Barbara and the rest of the team.
I second that motion.
Great suggestion or motion, Paula, and because I do think it, it's all, they've invested a lot of time and energy in it, and we need to look at this important issue. So we'll have a motion, Dara, to refer this agenda item to our next meeting in April, and we'll invite Barbara and Jamie back at that point to have a more in-depth discussion, and we'll put it earlier on in our agenda so you're not at the end again.
There's
Um,
no decision point here, is there? No.
We're
So
just
that's
sharing
fine.
for information.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we can, if we need to meet with you separately, we can do that too. That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. My motion.
So we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much for everyone. So
Thank you, Brian.
longer
Thanks,
meeting than
everybody.
we had a lot of work today to do, both in both meetings. So I appreciate people's time and energy, and we'll look forward to continue our important work in this area. So again, have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Debbie, seconded by, I think I saw Marcel. All those in
Okay.
favor?
I'm in favor.
Motion is carried.
Have a great day,
So,
people.
thanks
Bye,
very much.
everybody.
Yeah. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.